listening to the Small Town Queer podcast produced by Tweed Regional Museum in northern New South Wales, Australia. Follow us as we uncover and explore Tweed's rich queer history from the early 1900s to the present. The museum has collaborated with LGBTQIA+ community members to collect, share and preserve the histories of Tweed's many and varied queer voices. We wish to recognise the generations of local Aboriginal people of the Bundjalung Nation who are the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we are recording this podcast today. My name is Emma Shield.
And my name is Erica Taylor, and we are the curators of the Small Town Queer digital project and exhibition. Hello! On today's podcast, we are talking to Tobin Saunders, famously known as Vanessa Wagner. Tobin is a freelance performer, writer, choreographer, dancer, actor, DJ and events coordinator and producer. He is the creator of one of Australia's most well-known, colourful and entertaining identities, Vanessa Wagner. Tobin has been involved in theatre works, production and performance at Mardi Gras, in fashion parades, film and dance variety theatres, numerous TV appearances. For 35 years, Tobin has been an activist, HIV advocate and educator. He has been an out HIV role model since his diagnosis in 1991. Tobin moved to the Northern Rivers in 2002 and is currently the Community Health Promotions Officer for ACON Northern Rivers. Welcome, Tobin. Thank you for joining us for the museum's first podcast series.
You're welcome. It's great to chat to you, Erica.
We're so excited you decided to come on board with this project and help us out and tell your story and be one of our small town queer icons. And so we're asking in this podcast, we're asking all of our participants, the first question is how do you identify as a small town queer?
Wow. Okay. How do I identify as a small town queer? Oh, I think I go through periods of being very low key and someone who fits into the general regional landscape, and other times in my different work modes or performance modes, I identify as kind of like this rare, colourful, unusual creature that sort of stands out from the local flora and fauna. So yeah, I'm a bit of a all over the shop.
It's good to stand out though, isn't it? That's it's a beautiful thing to do. If we were all the same, life would be very boring.
Yeah, look, I think my identity doesn't differ enormously. I think sometimes our public and private, performance of identity can change with our environments, and sometimes that's around familiarity or safety or a whole lot of reasons. So yeah, I think my identity is not static. It's fluid.
Talking about your identity and your alter identity, I guess. Do you want to give listeners, this is going to be a hard question, a brief history about you, how you and Vanessa got started?
Yeah, that's a brief history. I studied dance after rescuing a little warehouse party in Sydney in the 80s, which led to learning some dance, which led me to studying at the Centre for Performing Arts in Adelaide, which led me to meet a fantastic group of amazing people with creative minds and comedic leanings. And through that dance, we developed, once we'd graduated, we went back to Sydney and created some very interesting kind of anti-dance, parody dance, piss-taking what we thought was, quite serious high culture. And within that was a whole lot of gender fuck, really. People dressing up in all sorts of outfits, regardless of their sex assigned at birth. So we had cis women and cis men dragging it up. And then I was always fond of chucking a party. and because to get through some of my studies and some of my performing work, I had to be a bartender and a barista. So I learned how to make cocktails. And I saw a crazy movie, a telly movie, and one of the characters was called Vanessa Wagner, which is where her name came from. And this mad character was born around 1991 through a whole lot of parties in my Darlinghurst pad, which were very popular, invite only, very camp, and you had to dress up. So it was kind of an enforced, it was kind of an anti-casual stance. In the early 90s, you may remember in some cities there was, it was the white t-shirts and jeans for the gay boys, and everything was quite pared back, and there was the industrial look, and I wanted to bring back colour and movement. So she was born and won Mardi Gras Fair Day, Miss Mardi Gras Fair Day in 1993, and from then onwards I promoted parties and events and hosted all sorts of activities. Right up to the drag race at Bondi Beach, hosting the street reporting for the Mardi Gras telecast, and a myriad of other gigs. So yeah, she's still around.
She's still around, yes. And while you're on, speaking of her past kind of achievements, she was also involved in the Sydney Olympics closing ceremony.
Yes, and damn, I smuggled a little mini tape recorder, video recorder in. I was on the Priscilla sort of floats, sitting atop a huge wig, and I've lost that footage. But that was both, an honour and an incredibly exciting experience. But I had some reservations too about where we were placed in the parade. We were kind of at the arse end, and it just felt a little bit like we could have been announced and given a little bit more respect and honour, along with all the big stars and sports people. But it was fantastic that was parts of LGBTIQ inclusion in that ceremony, and really critical for the world to see that Sydney and also this country has a long history of performing and gender illusionism and queer culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And so while Vanessa is evolving, so it was around that time you were diagnosed as HIV positive?
That was a bit earlier. So that happened around early 1991. And so that was kind of at the end of my dance studies and the very beginning of my at the earlier stages of my performing with a dance troupe. By the time 2000 came, that was nearly a decade on. And for a lot of POS people, they may not have thought they were going to see the new millennium. And so it was, for me, a personal milestone to survive to then.
Yeah, a scary time too for
Yes.
so many people.
Yes.
And so why did you decide to move up to the beautiful Northern Rivers?
Vanessa had been performing all across the country, in regional towns, capital cities, and I was able to venture up to the Northern Rivers of New South Wales on several occasions to support local events, and some of those events were for HIV positive people in the community. I can remember hosting a fab women's event. There was a debate around lipstick lesbians and butch lesbians, and it was a real honour to be asked to host that, and it was hysterical. So look, I sensed something beautiful about this area and felt it. And a few friends had some little holiday rentals that they would come up to, and so I was exposed to some towns in the Northern Rivers, and I just thought, this is beautiful. This is where I want to be. And for it's interesting. There's like this diaspora of all sorts of people that have come to the Northern Rivers for a whole lot of reasons over the last few decades. But probably in the 90s, a lot of HIV positive gay men came to this area as a place of healing, but also to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city and maybe have a quieter life. And look, to be honest, I thought I was going to come up here and just die quietly in the hills, and that didn't happen. So it was an escape from the city and the attraction of the beauty of this area, and the fact that it has a vibrant queer culture in places, but also just has a lovely, gentle and accepting vibe.
Can you describe a bit how you felt moving from Sydney and from that scene, which is, so big and bright and busy and loud in a way, moving up here? What was life like when you first moved up here?
Well, I kind of ran. It was, I think some people's, when big things happen in your life, they can be a crisis or just a big key moment. And for me, it was a combination of Sydney becoming more gentrified. It was becoming noisier, expensive. I had had a few issues with various business people down in Sydney with my performing work, which kind of made me feel a little bit cranky and cynical. So for me, it was a bolt. What do they call it? A geographical. And having been up here before for several Christmases, I'd experienced the pace. But I think for a lot of people that it can take up to a couple of years to really just settle into that slower pace of life. So for me, it was like an instant relief to be away from the noise and the cacophony and all those things that I wanted to break from. But it was like relearning how to relax and not have a gay bar just round the corner, or sex on tap down the road, or endless cafes and street culture. And that was the biggest and hardest adjustment, was that immediate sense of isolation, which then softened into a lovely sense of solitude and contention. I mean, contentedness.
And what about Vanessa? I know, I've been lucky enough to see Vanessa's closet. How did Vanessa kind of adapt to regional life?
Look, Vanessa, in some ways, is the drag queen for the people. A little bit like the VW vehicle. She's the people's drag queen, and so really, it didn't matter where she was. I think people respond very basically, really, to a character like Vanessa with all that colour and movement. So wherever I performed in the area, I was, welcomed with open arms, and and Vanessa loved it as well. I think the humidity might have impacted on her hair a little bit, her wig, and it's not fun whacking on that much makeup in 90% humidity when it's 35 degrees, but we do adjust.
And does the regional audience adjust? How do you find there's a difference between a regional audience for your performances and a more, urban city audience?
It depends on the performance. So I can remember hosting a comedy event in a little town up here in the north, and obviously it's really important to do research around local quirks and local insights, and have some little observation about what's happening, and tailoring that. So I think that happens for any performer. If you're in a particular place, it's great to connect with people to show that you know what's happening in that area. If it's me hosting a performance or an event around something like HIV and education around HIV, those themes are quite universal. So if I'm supporting a group of people talking around HIV treatments or around mental health, those topics don't vary a lot from location to location, but having said that, maybe on the topic of mental health, a bit of social isolation and a few other factors might come into play when you're hosting in a regional space.
Your advocacy work and that role that you take as an educator, what year did you start? Well, can you remember what year you started with ACON up here?
I mean, my advocacy started way back in the mid 80s with the Sydney Gay Youth Group, and then in the late 80s doing some performances for ACT UP before I was even HIV positive. And then I came out very publicly in Sydney as soon as I became HIV positive as a personal way of releasing any kind of secrets, but also as a way of sharing my experience and trying to minimize stigma by not being ashamed of it, by being really out and proud and not shamed that this is something that can happen to anyone. So that happened quite early on, and then a variety of HIV/AIDS organisations around the country saw the opportunity of a fun, eloquent at times character advocate for HIV. So I had worked for ACON as a contractor on and off for and other organisations for decades, and so when I moved up to the Northern Rivers about 17 years ago, that continued, although a lot of the work was in Sydney and Melbourne, and I think too, drag is exhausting and often not well paid, and things are changing now, it seems, which is great. And so the opportunity to work at ACON in health promotion happened around 2010. So it was 10 years in May this year. So that's community health promotion, very separate from the Vanessa work, but similar themes around messaging around HIV and STI prevention, stigma, support for our communities.
And so on that topic, there was a moment, speaking about being out and using that to bring positive messages and advocate for people who are HIV positive. So back in 2002, you were on Australian Celebrity Big Brother. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, it's sort of equally the zenith and nadir of that part of my life. Another friend who was a celebrity declined to be on the show and suggested that I go on, and I'd sort of looked at how little queer representation there was, and in some ways there still is in our mainstream media. It was the early days of reality television. Big Brother was really rating very highly, and the producers kind of had to do some research. They asked a few key people if they knew who I was, to confirm my celebrity status, and that was confirmed. And I just thought, this is an opportunity to be in the lounge rooms of mainstream Australia, showing myself as an out, happy, comfortable, healthy gay man, but also a performer, and I wanted that to be seen. And so I went into the house, and it was a very as on the opening night, which was live television, I think I only decided at the last minute that this was an opportunity to get a message in without it being edited out. And it was the funds raised for the Celebrity Big Brother in 2002 were for the Starlight Foundation, and I thought it was really important that as a HIV positive person that I shared my experience with the audience and gave them hope, in the face of potential adversity. So, having not told the producers, the host, or any of the housemates, I outed myself as HIV positive on national television before we went into the house, which was, I loved it. I loved doing it, and a lot of people were very grateful that I did that, because that just wouldn't happen normally. You wouldn't have the mention of HIV and a happy, healthy face matching that on mainstream television at 7 o'clock at night.
And it must have been one of the first times that's ever happened on live television. Surely.
I don't know about that. Maybe in Australia. I mean, I'm sure there would have been many editorials and documentaries and small, TV segments around HIV with people being interviewed. But in that context of popular culture and reality television and throwing HIV and drag and homosexuality into the mix, it was a heady brew.
Yeah, I think one that's remembered by probably quite a few, Australian people, but not easily forgotten.
Yeah, and I don't think it was really discussed much in the house at all, which was interesting. People weren't sort of trying to keep their distance with all that misinformation around, how HIV is, passed on. What I think was more interesting was that the producers were expecting me to just be living in drag the whole time. And so it was about unpacking some of that assumptions and confusions around performing as a drag character, or being transgender, or being a transvestite, or, really clarifying that. So I wanted the public to see that when I wasn't in drag, I was a quite different person. A cisgendered white gay man with interests that vary from other gay men. So it was about just by existing on television is representing a part of our community, and that was the most important part for me.
Absolutely. I think one of my favourite things, I've seen a few clips, there's not much footage left around. My favourite clips are when Vanessa got out, the interviews she did with, I think it was Bert Newton, or the morning shows.
Yes.
Was just fantastic. You just continue to advocate, and she's so quick-witted. She's so quick.
Look, it was very exciting. I mean, once I was evicted from the house with Anthony Mundine, I was making a joke that the drag queen, gay man, and the Aboriginal man are the first to go, to sort of marginalised minorities. But there was quite a lot of media attention, and that was fun to sort of ride on that wave. But it was also sad because, there was this suggestion or expectation that this might translate into somebody wanting to utilise Vanessa to, host her own show, or be more than just a sort of queer bauble that gets dragged out, for occasions, which sometimes I think happens with drag. It's like, oh, we need some colour of movement. We'll get a drag queen. Doesn't matter who they are, what they are, but they just and I like the idea of seeing performers front and centre of their own work and shows. And I did work on a pilot variety TV show that didn't get picked up, and that's something. Maybe it was just the timing. Vanessa's always joked about being, ahead of her time and on the cutting edge, and that sometimes takes a while for culture to catch up.
I absolutely think that's true. And Emma and I spoke about how Vanessa was ahead of her time, but particularly the time you went the Big Brother time, where social media wasn't around, and how different that might look now with social media and, hashtags, and how viral kind of messages can go. It's interesting that she's she is ahead. She is ahead of her time, and she's doing all these things that would be interesting to see now in that kind of social media world.
Yeah, well, our media back then was very much radio and television and telephones. And when you had an opportunity to be on television, particularly free-to-air television, the audiences were huge, and but they were not as big as potential audiences now. So yeah, how that might translate in this new digital world. Yeah, it's hard to see. There's a lot of people out there now putting content out, and um, you really do need probably a sort of a younger, savvy social media person to really help. What's that? Curate your life, your digital life now. Yes, she was an influencer before it was even a digital term.
I think she would have just been a massive influencer. Um, but it must have been, it's hard to be the groundbreaker, I guess, the person that goes first. So.
Yeah, I mean, I so enjoyed, co-hosting the Ladies Lounge on Triple J as a guest, and also being guests on various shows. But I kind of drew the line where it was like, no, I don't want to just keep being a guest on another sort of quiz panel show or another show. I want my show. I want to be the host of this. I want to lead this. I want to show that queer people and drag queens are strong in themselves and just as capable of leading, rather than being a part of the sort of mainstream popular culture.
And on that note, how important do you think that is in a regional setting as well? I mean, compared to the cities where I can imagine it might be an easier path.
Well, I think it depends where you are. So, in some regional spaces, we have different levels of diversity, and I think it's really critical to have a good balance of representation everywhere. In some ways, I don't think it matters where you are. But also, yeah, with the change in our media landscape, recently we've had a lot of local newspapers that have been axed, and that opportunity for local stories to be told in a local context has changed. I know there are message boards and social media groups that support people, but yeah, I think more than ever, diversity needs to be represented in our regional communities, because sometimes people are physically distanced from each other, and so that doesn't give the opportunity to create maybe a critical mass that then gives a profile to people and what they do.
And so you might have an idea through your role with ACON and in the community. Do you think it's important to have dedicated queer community spaces in regional areas?
I do. I think everyone wants a space where they feel safe and can really let their hair down, metaphorically and act and physically. Well, that's being a bit hairist, isn't it? Assuming everyone's got lots of hair. I used to always think, look, we, as a marginalised minority LGBTIQ people, needed the comfort and safety of their own dedicated spaces as a way of developing, seeing diversity within their community, and then using that as a way of being able to engage in the greater community. So I believe there's room for both. I don't think I would want to just exclusively attend queer events or go to queer spaces, but I think it's really important that they're available. but also that mainstream spaces, through whatever way, whether it's symbolic or through signage, or through just their inviting sort of ways, ensure that queer people feel safe and comfortable in those spaces as well. Because, I love all humans, and it's fun to be in a room with people who could talk to you about an experience that you've never heard of or thought of, and vice versa. So I find that tension and difference really exciting. Not that doesn't happen within queer spaces, but I think the dynamics are different.
Yeah, so one of the things I know we've been doing as a museum, as part of Small Town Queer and queering our museum, we've been working with ACON to get diversity training to all of our staff and volunteers, but we've also taken part in the Welcome Here project.
Yep.
It's just such an easy thing to do for any kind of business or space, to go onto the Welcome Here website and sign up, and you get your welcome pack with stickers, just basically saying everyone is welcome here in this space.
And I think it's a beautiful program, and it's great to have watched that program move from the Anti-Violence Project many years ago to the Safety and Inclusion program. And yeah, little things like that make a big difference. So for people who aren't in a large capital city with a big LGBTQ community and concentrations of LGBTQ populations, just seeing a little symbol is enough. Like even in a local shop here, the company allows the staff to put rainbow badges, little rainbow flags on their name badges, and that has a really profound impact for some people. Or if people choose to wear a pronoun badge, that can have a really profound impact on particularly like a young gender diverse person who might feel a little bit alone and misunderstood, and to see those symbols and to see that knowledge reflected back is really affirming.
And I just, I think ACON, they make it so easy to do for people and businesses. It's so easy. It's no trouble at all. And it makes such a big impact, such a small kind of thing to do.
Yeah, and look, there's a whole spectrum of capacity in our supporting community groups, organisations. So we have a whole pride in training, pride in wellbeing, pride in sport. There's all different levels of online, in-person cultural competence training that people can participate in. And having hosted some training over the last 10 years in various settings, from aged care settings to alcohol and drug settings, it's a reminder that this work still needs to be done, because there wasn't, our education system has often shied away from talking about sexuality and gender diversity, and often too, when people enter tertiary education for their work in a sector, often LGBTIQ issues are not embedded in that. So when you're talking to a whole room of aged care workers and talking to them about an aging trans woman and her needs in an aged care setting, that requires lots of support and lots of awkward questions and gentle support.
And are there any programs or projects you're working on at the moment that you'd like to let people know about?
Well, Vanessa, it's weird. I've sort of got this, what do you call it? Not split personality. It's like I've got a partitioned hard drive. ACON's currently working around AIDS Awareness Week and World AIDS Day, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander HIV Awareness Week. and then health promotion leading up to New Year. In the absence of any major parties this year, our focus will be on ensuring we can get our HIV and STI prevention messages out to our community in a sort of COVID-safe way. But also in my Vanessa world, Vanessa will be attending the HIV Society for HIV Medicine, ASHM conference, just reporting back on a series of events during winter called Chinwag Positive Connection. And these were events that Vanessa had hosted for at least a decade prior around the country for HIV positive people to come together to talk about various themes. So this year, Positive Connection, Chinwag was around keeping people connected during COVID-19. So it'll be great to showcase what we did to clinicians and academics and workers and conference attendees. There's plenty else going on just in general at ACON. We're very busy. We're constantly evolving, and it's everything's been thrown up a bit in the air with COVID too, just for everyone. So yeah, lots happening.
Lots happening for you and Vanessa. Well, thank you so much, Tobin, for joining us here on our podcast. We really, really appreciate your time and sharing your small town queer story with us.
Well, thank you. Yes, it was a bit of a sea change, tree change, flea change, but I don't regret it at all.
Thank you for listening to the Small Town Queer podcast. To hear more small town queer stories, subscribe to the series and like, share and review this episode. And check out the Small Town Queer playlist on Spotify, curated by museum staff and project participants. For more information about Small Town Queer, visit museum.tweed.newsouthwales.gov.au/small-town-queer. Tweed Regional Museum is supported by the New South Wales Government through Create Funding New South Wales. This project would not have been possible without the support and collaboration of the people of Tweed, who have generously shared their lived experiences, archives and objects with this project.